So did any health professional tell you that dental fluorosis is caused by toxic levels of fluoride in the body, not just the surface effect on teeth?
No, that is well hidden. In Geelong, there's not even a toxicologist. I urged and pushed my GP until he sent me up to this hospital to get some tests done to see what my allergies were. Of course, they took my money. They took my money and they failed to diagnose me. They failed to treat me. Instead, I was told stories like, you may have to go to Melbourne because we haven't got it. And then my GP said, well, here's a list of names. Let's go to Melbourne. Ring these up. And I consequently couldn't get an appointment to get a diagnosis from those toxicologists in Melbourne. So that's never been treated. I've treated it myself with what I know.
How do you feel now that you weren't told about the damage fluoride has caused to the rest of your body?
Absolutely betrayed. I feel cheated, conned, and I've lost my wife. All my friends are dead. I know of the high death rate, and there's something not right.
How are your teeth though? Are your teeth nice and strong?
They're artificial. I have no teeth. I lost my teeth at a very early age.
But isn't fluoride supposed to save your teeth?
I fell for those lies and that deceit too. It's not true. It took the coating off my teeth decayed, they gradually became brittle and broke off. That is a fabricated lie.
So you now have diabetes. Do you drink more water these days?
Drink a lot of water.
Do you drink fluoridated water?
Under no circumstances, I buy good water.
When you say good water, you mean unfluoridated, perhaps spring water?
Spring water, I get water from Dartford. I'm forever looking for a good source of water. I don't necessarily even trust the water that I buy, and I wonder if sometimes that the government may have infiltrated the bottled water that we buy.
So do you drink more water because you know it's healthier, or do you drink more water because you're thirstier, or do you drink more water because you have diabetes?
I drink more water because I have diabetes. I am thirsty, and if I drank more good water, that would gradually help clean my system.
Great. And has the government or your water supplier offered to pay for your expenses to avoid drinking your tap water? For example, have they offered to buy you a water filter?
Under no circumstances. They don't want to know about it. I've been threatened and I've been bullied.
But surely if we're going to be forced to drink water that's fluoridated, there should be an alternative that the government offers.
There has been no alternative, and they thought they'd get away with it scot-free. They're only bullies.
Do you believe that you have the right to have your costs covered to avoid fluoridated water?
Absolutely. I have been a number of months without actually being able to have a decent shower. Since I put fluoride in here, I've refused because I know the harm that it'll do to me, and your skin absorbs fluoride. So I've been filtering water to put in a watering can and heat it up in front of the heater, just so that I can have a shower.
Yeah, so you react very strongly to fluoridated water for bathing.
Absolutely. My whole health and any future that might have depends on the water.
So avoiding fluoridated water.
Whether I shower in it, or whether I wash my clothes in it, or whether I drink it, or whether I cook with it, I avoid it like a plague.
Do you have a water tank?
No.
Are you able to put a water tank in?
Government should have provided something. I don't necessarily trust a water tank here because of the heavy pollution from industry, the high levels of fluoride. It lands on your roof, it rains, it washes it in your tank. I don't believe that's the answer.
So whereabouts, what is the name of the town that you live in?
I'm in Geelong.
Which is in Victoria, Australia?
Yeah, in Australia. I am actively Coria, which is the north side of Geelong.
So there's several industries that put a lot of fluorides into the air, and of course that would settle on roofs.
Yeah, in particular because of the airshed, Corio, Norlane, Lara would be particularly high. I do believe that these people have been shipped in here one by one, and then everything has been taken off them.
Frank, if you could just for the camera state what your name is and your credentials.
Yes, I'm Frank Parsons. I've qualified Diploma of Science from Deakin University and Certificate of Applied Chemistry from the Old Gordon Institute.
Great. And what is your relationship to Brian?
I'm a practicing analyst in human tissue studies, and I took a sample of Brian's hair and analysed it for 47 elements. This was to see if fluoride featured, as well as whether or not there was organ damage that might have resulted from exposures to fluoride. In this case, I found kidney damage and liver damage, and the fluoride containing drugs are known to cause liver damage, and literature states that accumulated fluoride can cause cumulative damage, particularly in the renal tubule of the kidneys. So they were the things I looked at in terms of Brian.
What was your findings in your test results? Perhaps you could show the camera your test results there.
Yes, here's a sheet that I've highlighted so that we can see some features, but fluoride was in the toxic range, as is 30% in terms of the normal population, but also it featured, this scan showed that Brian has liver damage and particularly kidney renal damage, and this is in the tubules, which means that his reabsorption of alkali elements is very poor, so he, as a consequence of that, is developing osteoporosis.
And you, in your scientific opinion, feel that that is caused by fluoride? Or at least aggravated severely by...
Fluoride is documented as causing renal damage, and Brian was one of the first people in Victoria to be exposed to fluoridation in the water. It's hard to isolate exact causes of organ damage, but his shows also associated gastrointestinal impairments, so it's reasonable to think that fluoride played a role in it.
Have you seen improvement in Brian's condition with removing fluorides out of his diet?
I set him on a special diet, and this morning I hardly recognised him, and they are improvements to the good.
Here is a photograph of Brian Allen when he first went to see Frank Parsons. The skin lesions on his forehead and under his nose are not from having scraped himself as if in an accident, but from the skin being severely irritated from within. His puffy eyes are from kidney and liver problems, and at this juncture, Brian had the symptoms of coughing, back pain, depression, stomach pain, and the conditions of chronic asthma, diabetes, and he'd suffered a heart attack.
Frank, I believe you've got a picture of what Brian used to look like at one point in his treatment. Perhaps you could just flash that to the camera.
Yes, and if you notice, it has lesions or breaks in his skin up on his forehead. That's typical of a fluoride eliminating via the skin.
So Frank hasn't actually fallen over and hurt his head or anything. That's actually from fluoride trying to escape from the body.
You just wake up one morning and it starts as a small rash and it gets bigger and it can break.
And what about the one on his nose? Is that the same as well?
Yeah, that's the same thing.
Same sort of thing. And your toxicology report, does that correlate with what you're showing as Brian's symptoms?
It does, because the fluoride is in the red zone there. So it'd be the first thing I'd do, because it's very aggressive like that. It was the first thing that I considered.
Can you think of anything else that you might like to say that will back up Brian's condition from your scientific perspective of knowing the effect of fluorines on the soft tissues?
His mineral scan was significantly different to that I normally encounter where there's no fluoride. And whilst he'd been living fluoride free in terms of the water supply, there's so many other places where you can get fluoride in your diet, in your atmospheres and all that sort of thing, that he's obviously not excreted the original fluorides to any great degree, and he's just accumulated them. And in my view, his case looks quite different to most.
Do you think it's common for people not to be able to excrete fluoride?
Very common, because it appears that strontium is required in the excretion of fluorides, and Brian was very low on strontium, and so it's most likely that contributed, by virtue of the fact that for years, whilst drinking the fluoridated water, he depleted his strontium levels.
Perhaps for the lay people that are watching this, could you just explain a little further what strontium is?
Strontium is a component of bone, and it's reabsorbed in the kidneys from our dietary substance to maintain its level. And of course, if you damage the kidneys with fluoride, insufficient is reabsorbed to react with the fluoride and keep its effect on the body low.
Have you got any advice for viewers in terms of water fluoridation?
Well, I don't drink fluoridated water. I have special reverse osmosis treatment of my water, and each of the people that consult me for help, I advise the same, and I ensure that my family is drinking at least reverse osmosis water that's relatively free of fluoride.
But what about these people that can't actually afford to get reverse osmosis? There's a lot of pensioners and aged people who can't afford reverse osmosis units, or there's people that can't afford water tanks. What advice would you give to these people?
Well, I can't give advice, because you've got to drink so much water each day, upwards of 3 litres, and if you've got no other source of water than from the sink or wherever it comes into your house, you're forced to drink that water, irrespective of its contamination.
Right. So with regard to Brian's case, have you got any further information that you could, perhaps from the experience of seeing what Brian went through, have you got any further advice you could give to viewers?
I would be very cautious of drinking water that's had fluoride enhancement, fluoridation in fact.
Beware of these governments. They've let you down, they've sold you out, and the whole community is suffering.